Jordan, welcome to the Jory Business Academy podcast. I am so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Robyn.
It is such a pleasure. I've really been looking forward to this conversation for a couple of weeks now because obviously you're a part of the OnePeak Creative team and the work you guys are doing is just incredible. And so I'm super pumped to comes to hooks and reels and content creation with you. But before we dive into any of that, do you want to go ahead and just introduce yourself to our listeners and share a little bit of your story and kind of how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. So I live right down the road from you in British Columbia.
We're neighbors,
Canada.
yeah.
I'm the director of coaching with OnePeak Creative. So we're a content creation business at its core. And I basically help people, in kind of a more intimate setting, people who have gone through some of our programs, want more direct support, kind of looking to get to the next level. It came about very happenstance. I was pursuing my dream of playing professional golf in 2023. And I realized quickly that the expenditures add up very fast in a space like that. And you have to be very good. And you have to be very good at being away from home often. And you have to have the ability to financially float yourself, and it's a difficult venture without a doubt. And so I started exploring different ways of, generating cash. And I was like, well, content creation seemed like the next logical step. And I had done what a lot of people say you should do: post 3 times a day, stay consistent, trending audios, this, that, and the next thing. Nothing really worked very well. And when it did, I didn't know why it worked. So yeah, I just bought, I bought the course that, kind of our hero offer, the TikTok and Reels course, and it worked right away. Overnight, literally. I followed the steps, posted a video, woke up the next day, it had like 300,000 views. And I was like, well, that's different. Viral to me before that was like calling my mom from the grocery store parking lot one day when I had 15,000 views on a video. I just thought that was so crazy. So 10 months after that, I had built a channel to like 20 million views, maybe 35,000 followers. And when the time was right, the people at OnePeak, some of my closest friends, they were like, we need some help with a coaching program and we think you're the person to do it. So what do you think? And that's the Cliff Notes version of that.
Love that. That is so incredible. So I'm going to ask the question I know everybody's wanting to know after hearing a little bit more about your story, which is like, what would you say are like the key elements that were different from the content that you were creating before versus that viral piece of content? Like, if you had to break it down, like, what was the key differentiators?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that for anybody who is where I was, I think the most important thing to know is that A, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And B, if anybody else has ever done it before, then you can do it too. It's like making a meal. There's a formula, there's a recipe. It's not complicated. It's not hard. It's actually very easy. You don't have to post 3 times a day. You don't have to search, trending audios or themes or videos or whatever it is. I think that the gap between where I was and where I got to in a short period of time was just kind of understanding, a bit of a 3-step formula, which obviously I'd be very happy to cover today in full transparency, and then understanding kind of how the algorithms work, what they want, what separates a video from getting stuck in 200 view jail to getting, tens of millions of views or more. I've seen just the craziest things from this from my vantage point. Not a lot like surprises me anymore. Somebody starting with 30 followers when I started working with them in our group program, and then like in 6 weeks, 330,000 followers and 100 million views on a brand new channel. And you're like, yeah, it's crazy, but it works in any niche, any industry. It's like I said, it's not complicated. It's just knowing what the algorithm wants, what your audience wants, and what separates good content from content that flops.
That is so incredible. And I think it's going to give a lot of listeners a lot of hope, because sometimes sometimes people feel like Instagram's all doom and gloom. They pour a lot of
Mhm.
time and energy in, and they're consistent with doing that. And they make the mistake of thinking, oh, all I need to do is be consistent. And at
Yeah.
some point I'll like hit the mark. And I'm putting in hours, I'm putting in time, and they mistake like the hours and energy they put into something with that being productive. And it's not, if you don't necessarily have the right strategy, or you're not doing what's actually required to drive awareness, to drive views, all that stuff. So I'd love for us to dive into the 3-step strategy that you were talking about.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, first, now I think that what's important before somebody is going to like dive into making content, clicking record, hitting publish. I think one of the there's a couple things, if you don't mind, that I think have to happen before that. That I think if they're not in place, nothing anybody really does is going to work very well for them. And it's just a couple simple notes. But the first one is understanding that like if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them, and letting go of the idea that like it can't work for you. And that's one of the most common blocks that I hear from people is they're like, I know this will work, but how do I know it's going to work for me? You know, and that's kind of where I was too. I was like, yeah, but, and that's like the ego's 2 favorite words, like, yeah, but, I can't because I live here, or I've done this, or I'm too old or too young. So first is like, get your head around the fact that it can happen for anyone. And it can happen very quickly too. It doesn't take a lot of time. The second thing would be proof of concept and market research. So understand that like, it's very important to not be too broad, and it's very important to have a niche. And then it's also important to know if that potential size. So, for example, like cat moms in the Pacific Northwest, there might only be, let's say, 50,000 of those, right? Or that's arbitrary number, but making sure that like there's actually enough of an audience for what it is you want to create content around. Because if your total possible, if you posted a video targeting cat moms in the Pacific Northwest and every single one of them watched it, but there's only 50,000 of them, you're going to cap out at 50,000 views, right? And then the last thing is that you just have to understand that there's only 3 reasons why people watch content. Okay, so education, people want to learn something, right? So for me, that's the format I used a lot, educating people. They can take it, save it to their phone, send it to their friends, whatever it was. They can have a better quality of life as a result of something they can learn from you. Entertainment, that's another one that, people just want to check out for a minute from their life. And inspiration is the third one. So, people want to go, they want a sense of permission, like, oh, if they did it, I can do it too. Those are really the only kind of 3 reasons I've ever found that somebody would watch a video. So just knowing those 3 things, like, yes, you can do it. You need a proof of concept or a bit of market research. And then also just understanding why people watch content to begin with. So I think that before
anything else.
Yeah, before anything else, very, very important. Because sometimes it's just a little bit too niche, and then you make really great content, but there's just not a lot of people that are going to watch it. Or your audience is spending time on different platforms like LinkedIn. I just talked to somebody she was making, educational content for general practitioners in Australia. And then we were like, God, maybe there's just like not that many of them, and so like time to pivot. In terms of content creation in and of itself, very, very simple. Okay. So anybody who's like watching this, listening to this, has a notepad in front of them, you have to know that watch time is like the sole governing factor. Okay. So the longer somebody spends on your video, the more it's going to start to get recommended to larger and larger pools of people. So typically the first test pool is very small. It's about 200 people. From there, you might go from like a pool of 200 to 2,000. You might go to 20,000 after that. The pools keep getting bigger based on watch time. So watch time is king. It's really, really the one thing that matters the most, and the thing that's gonna be the driving force behind whether your content gets 200 views, 200,000, 2 million. I mean, sky is kind of the limit there, but that's the most important thing to understand before you start scripting, storyboarding, coming up with ideas. You have to understand that if you can keep people hanging on to the end, you're going to do really, really well. And if people bounce off your video in 2 seconds, which unfortunately happens a lot in 2025 when our attention span is very slim, then you can have a great video. And unfortunately, it's not really going to reach very many people because, like I said, as soon as the algorithm knows that not a lot of people are watching the whole thing, it gets filed under the boring category. And that's about it.
Yeah, that's a sad time. That's where a lot of
Yeah.
content does fall, especially like our listeners are jewelry business owners. A lot of them are maybe in the first 2 to 5 years. We have a lot of people in the 10 to 15 to 20 years. Again, even the people who are more established, sometimes the social side, the content side feels kind of new. And so a lot of people are creating subpar content that is just getting those minimal views, and it can feel so frustrating. And so I think that recognition that watch time is the key metric to be looking at, and not to be obsessing over the likes and engagement and all of that above watch time can make such a difference. And I just wanted to say, Jordan, what you said at the very beginning before you dived into this was about how we have to change the story we tell ourselves about content, and tell ourselves like, this isn't going to work for me, versus like, oh, this has worked for other people, which is proof that it can work for me too, is so, so important. And there's a really great, I don't know if you listen to Alex Hormozy, he's one of my favorite podcasters. Sure. But he has a really great podcast on that specific topic. And it's why you get some people who go into programs or courses, or, even learning about reels, who will really excel versus people who just don't see the same results. And it comes down to, are they coming in and just being like, I've seen proof that this works for other people, so I'm just going to go and do it until it works for me? Or are they coming in saying, oh, this worked for everyone else, but I'm a special unicorn and nothing's going to work for me because of X, Y, Z? Because then all they're looking to do is prove that it doesn't. And so I think it's such a great perspective shift, and it's such a great reminder. And it's one of the first things we do with clients in the JB as well. Like, as soon as they're coming in, we're talking about that, because shifting that story before you even go into the strategy makes a world of difference as to if that strategy is going to be effective for you as well. So I'm so glad you shared that. But yeah, watch time is a big one. And I think a lot of people aren't aware of that.
Yeah. And again, like I said at the start, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And just a little bit of a shift in understanding what you're doing, why you're doing it, how it works, can be just the thing that changes everything for everybody. But like you said, that confirmation bias and the self-perpetuating loops and the self-perpetuating stories definitely can be a stranglehold. I could give the greatest strategy in the world to somebody who's convinced that nothing ever works for them, and then they're going to keep fulfilling the prophecy that nothing ever works for them. And meanwhile, you give a couple simple steps to someone who says, I'm going to crush it no matter what, even if I fail 100 times. And it's, I could tell you how the story ends for both of them for sure.
Oh, yeah. And I think it's just such a good reminder for our listeners as well. Like, if you guys have tried, once you've listened to this episode, if you go try what you're hearing, the strategies that Jordan's sharing today, it's not necessarily just trying it once and being like, oh, well, look, I did it, nothing happened. It's about like doubling down and doing it until you see those results. But talk to us about step 2, Jordan.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry, if we were to break the actual content, and because you have a lot of business owners here too, we'll talk about not just viewership, but also conversions, conversations, stuff like that, because viewership can be a vanity number sometimes. If it's a lot of people see it as the end of the road, like, I'm going to make great content and then I'm going to get millions of views, and then life's going to be good. And if you don't see those views as kind of the bridge between somebody not knowing who you are to somebody being a raving fan or a lifetime customer, then you're going to end up with numbers on a screen, and that'll be cool if that's all you're after. But if you're a business owner, which everybody, even someone who has a job, is just selling their time to the highest bidder. So I think that looking at is the moment that you register an account, you are a business, and to really treat it like a business, run it like a business. But so we'll cover some things kind of towards the end of like, what are some actionables that your audience can take. But I'd love to dive into, the viewership side of things, the content creation side of things. Anybody could leave here with the blueprint for millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. I don't know. Like I said, not a lot is that surprising anymore, but to really skyrocket and see organic content as a way that they can get a leg up on a lot of, other people in their industry. So,
Yeah.
watch time, it's kind of the sole governing factor. So how do we increase watch time, create watch time? Break a piece of content into 3 sections. So you have a hook, you have the value or the story or whatever's in the middle, and then you have a call to action at the end. It's pretty simple. But let's start with a hook. So a hook is basically, if you've ever watched a Netflix series, which I'm sure some of us have, then you know that at the start of each episode, they will typically foreshadow a few things that are going to take place in that episode, and then they'll start it. And the reason they do that is because in psychology, they call it opening loops. And so to open the loop is to open up a series of thoughts of like, okay, well, what were they alluding to? What happens? And anytime you can spark curiosity, you're going to increase retention 1,000x, because they say that curiosity killed the cat. It also, drove your channel way up the algorithm. Anytime you can spark curiosity with a great hook, you're going to give people a reason to watch to the end. When you give them a reason to watch to the end, you're going to have an incredible amount of watch time on your video.
Mm-hmm.
So a hook could be, there's typically 3 ways that you're going to put a hook on a video. So the first one is going to be a text hook. We have a girl in our community that's, she's an artist. That's a niche where a lot of people have a very, very limiting story about what they can do. They're, I'm a starving artist. I just paint. Well, she's like running multiple 6-figure business. And she was always kind of throttled around the kind of 5,000 view mark. She had between 2 videos, I would have to check and get you the actual number, but I'd like to say I could find 2 videos on her page right now combined have about 13 million views. And both of them relied entirely on a text hook. So a text hook is basically a little speech bubble, a little text bubble that goes on. I mean, we've all seen them on the first few seconds of the video. Really important, especially if the video doesn't have a lot of talking, to kind of create a concept around what the video is going to be about. So it could be hers, for example, was one video that did really well, got about 3 million views. She was carrying a painting, one of her own originals, down a set of stairs. And she accidentally hits the painting on the top of the stairwell. And the text hook said, my client, in quotations, like, something about like how her client wouldn't let her husband touch their $10,000 painting. And then she's like, me 2 minutes before. And it's like her, like, testing its durability. So without that text hook to conceptualize the video, people wouldn't know what it is they're watching. And there would be no reason for them to stay on the video, because we haven't sparked any curiosity, any interest in what the video is going to be about. That's the first one. There's 2 more. The second one would be, by the way, every video pretty much should have a text hook on it, because it takes 5 seconds to do and can be the difference that makes the difference. The second one is going to be like a spoken hook. So you could be like, I'm returning to golf after a 232-day layoff. This is exactly, I get layoff and layover mixed up. One of them you spend in an airport, the other one you don't. That's a video that I just scripted this morning, because I still do post content on my golf channel. So spoken, direct to camera. If you're a jewelry business owner, these are 3 things you probably don't know you're doing wrong. Something along those lines, right? A lot of different ways to go about it, but very powerful because you're speaking directly to your audience. That direct to camera is really, really good.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm so glad sorry, Jordan. I'm so glad you're
you're
talking
good.
about this, because I see, obviously, I think a lot of small business owners know, like, okay, I need the hook, I need the body, the CTA, but they're not implementing it and they're not doing it consistently. But then they also getting confused when it comes to hooks, because I see this all the time. I see them do a hook in the actual caption, but they're not putting that on their reels or their carousels, and they're not having the double hook, which is the text hook and the voice hook. And I don't know if you're going to talk about the visual hook, which is like shaking the camera or like something to draw in. And those all make such a difference, because people are busy. People are scrolling their phones in the grocery store, and we don't want to watch 30 seconds of a video to know if it's for us before we start watching. So I think that's such a good reminder.
Yeah, 100%. So exactly like you said, I mean, time is a valuable asset. and people
Mhm.
want to protect it at all costs. And if the only two levers that we can pull are pain and pleasure, so moving people away from pain towards pleasure, if they perceive that they're going to get more pleasure from leaving your video, or it's going to cost them too much to spend 30 seconds to hear what you are going to talk about, or to spend 3 minutes to hear what you were going to talk about that could have taken 45 seconds,
Mhm.
they're going to leave. And
Yeah.
and then on the flip side of that, if they can't imagine a world where they don't figure out what happens at the end of your video, they're going to stay. So it's pretty binary, either they do or they don't want to stay and watch what it is that you have to offer. One thing that you had just mentioned, which is very important, would be a visual hook. So a visual hook is typically a scene or a setting or an activity that's taking place on the video in the first few seconds, that really kind of penetrates beyond the conscious thinking mind, and really touches like more with on an unconscious level, again creating curiosity. And I'll tell you that the more kind of obscure the visual hook can be, the better the video is usually going to do, and the greater chance you have of increasing the retention, driving up the watch time. And there was one video, I can't remember even what the theme of it was, but the person was like standing there talking to the camera, but they were holding a stick of butter, and like nobody knew why they were doing that. Very, very very compelling. I don't know, like, it's something a little bit outside of the norm.
Weird.
I think
Yeah,
especially,
yeah,
yeah, weird is good. Like weird can be very, very powerful, especially in really kind of red ocean spaces like business coaching, personal
yeah.
training, music, stuff like that, where there are a lot of creators vying for attention.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's so funny because I spoke to one of my dear clients the other day about this. She's just such an incredible jewelry designer. She's building this business and she's really starting to come out of her shell. And for a long time, she tried to post in a way that she felt people would approve of her. But she's quirky, she's fun, she's got gorgeous pink hair. Being really reserved and stuff is not her style. She's just quirky. And I was like, lean into that, have fun with that.
Mm-hmm.
And like she did a post the other day, I can't remember what it was, but the hook was it was like you said, a little like funky, a little quirky, but it was very her as well. And it makes such a difference to people like staying around. So I think I like the stick of butter, but I also just like people like finding like what's those things that make you unique that you're kind of hiding behind, and you think people aren't going to want to follow along when they know these things about you, or when
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of too much in that way. What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah. Okay. So this would be more from kind of a human development side just for a second, but I think that this is very important for anybody to know, is that there's a great quote. I heard it first from Bob Proctor. I don't know who the originator of it was, but it says, "If I want to be free, I have to be me."
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you that I'm probably on the other side of this now, but this is something that I really struggled with, was like trying to fit the mold of a person or an idea of a person I thought that I had to be in order to be like appealing to an audience. And it's a fast track to misery. Even if you pull tens of millions of views, you're not going to be happy about it. And so if you can't see yourself doing it for the next year or a few years, or it just doesn't feel like you, don't even do it for 10 seconds because you think it's what people want. I worked with somebody and I wrote a content script for her, and she was like, I just can't, like, it's just not me. And I was like, then let's not do it. She was
Mm.
like, but it's written. And I was like, I don't really care. I'd rather that than you be laying in bed at night resenting me. And so, just in case anybody feels like that type of person who is multi-passionate, has a lot of interests, whatever it is, to give you a bit of permission. Like this morning I got a brand deal on just a small one on my golf channel. Okay. And then I picked up my electric guitar and I practiced that for like 20 minutes. And then I read a book about quantum physics. And then tonight I'm going to go for a run because it's something I'm learning how to do. And then I'm going to sit and write a slide deck about business and sales funnels and marketing for tomorrow morning's coaching call. And it's like, it's cool to be yourself. And it's
Mm.
also gives other people permission when they see that, gives other people permission to step into that role of not trying to fit, some made up version of themselves. And trust me that I've tried it, and it's just so not enjoyable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so be who you really are, and you'll do best. That's absolutely, and it's going to be a lot more fun. I 100%, guarantee it.
I totally agree. And just like a side note, I know we're going off topic here. We'll come back right back. But for anyone who's listening, who's like, okay, but like I've been in the corporate world for years. I've like put all these masks on. I don't even know who I am. Just let it be messy, let it be scrappy, and just keep taking action and showing up. And you will, through taking action, get clarity over who you are and like you'll slowly start removing those masks. But I just know, like, I've been in the corporate world, you kind of put these masks up for years and then it's really hard to know who you even are. So just a side note.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I think that the mask is something that, we all do at some point, until we realize that it's just not sustainable, and it's not sustainable, and it's definitely not enjoyable. And the other thing too is that sometimes we feel like we're a paper boat going through a raging river when we've kind of lost one identity and the next one hasn't really landed. So you just feel like it's a melting pot. You have absolutely no idea. You don't have much of a sense of self. But I think that building a strong foundation of self-worth is probably one of the most important things, understanding that like you can separate the act from the individual. And whether I make golf content or I make content about reading books about meditation, I have no idea. I mean, it doesn't change who I am as a human being. It's just something that you do. It's not not who you are.
Yeah, I love that so much. Okay, so let's go back to the hooks,
Sure.
Jordan. So I think we are on visual hooks.
Yeah. Okay. So visual hooks being the thing that you do typically at the start of the video that you're going to draw your viewer in, and it has to be, especially like I said, really red oceans, business, sales, marketing, stuff like that. Don't just do talking head style video sitting at a desk, because it's what everybody's doing already. And if you do what everybody's doing right now, you're going to get probably a pretty similar result. So I think change up, scenery, setting, hold things in your hand, do activities like, you want to do, let's say a video about, I don't know, content creation or sales funnels or something like that. Experiment, like do it while you're out for a walk. Do it while you're watering your lawn. Do it while you're, chopping vegetables. Just do it in a setting that's going to set you apart from the other 10 million people, trying to do the exact same thing. And so that visual, the visual hook is very, very important. It doesn't always apply in every video, but I do think that the more you can kind of stretch your creative limits a bit, the better you're going to do. And if you can add all three of those, a text hook, a spoken hook, and a visual hook in together, definitely pretty grand slam opportunity to create, a lot of retention with your viewer.
Yeah, that is so, so true. And I'm just thinking, because our listeners are all jewelry business owners, and I mean, it's so easy to have different settings, different locations, because they're doing events, they have their studio, they're ordering supplies, they're getting tons of boxes of packaging and pieces. Like, would you say a visual hook that's really powerful would be having that box there and you start opening because people kind of want to know what's inside? Or is that a little bit old now?
Yeah, no, that's totally good. And like I said, anything that is just a little bit different. And when you find something that works, and this is pretty universal, very applicable to any industry, anybody creating content, when you find something that works, try to do it again. And if it works well 2, 3, 4 times, that you've probably got something that you can go back to, kind of a bit of a rinse and repeat. I think that like you said, opening a box, stocking a shelf, just doing something that isn't just sitting talking directly to the camera, that works. Has its time and place.
Oh yeah, I love it. Okay, so let's dive into the next part, which is the body of the content, essentially the value element.
Yeah, so I think that the most important thing, whether it's educational, entertaining, or inspiring, I think the most important thing is that you deliver on what you said you were going to deliver on in the hook. Clickbait style hooks, you might get a lot of viewership once. You're going to also burn the bridge that is, people being able to trust you. So I think that the most important thing is delivering on what you said you were going to do. So whether it's, hey, I took my jewelry business from 250,000 to $5 million in 1 year. These are 4 things that helped me along the way. Or this was one mistake I was making that was keeping me stuck making the same amount of money every year over and over. Whatever it is, if you don't deliver on it during the actual piece of content, people don't get what they came for. They're going to have a really hard time trusting next time you put something out that it's going to be legit, that it's going to be something that they want to watch. So whatever it is that you're creating, I think make it exactly what you said it was going to be. And then a lot of people get hung up here about the length of time that the video is going to be. Like, they think that shorter is always better, and it's definitely not the case. I think that make the video and make that kind of the middle of the body of the video as long as it has to be, and not a second longer. And I'll give you one example. I made a video that was the concept was like, I dedicated a year of my life to playing pro golf. If I had to start over, these are 5 things I would do again. The video was like 4.5 minutes long. And I was like, this is going to tank. And it got, like 800,000 views. And I was like, I went over it 10 times. I was like, I just can't find anything that I would really take out of it. Now, if it was 4.5 minutes, but it could have been 90 seconds, then it probably wouldn't have done very well. So that's, no matter what it is that you're actually making, just understand that, make it as long as it has to be, not a second longer, a second shorter. And then lastly, try to change up the scene and the setting quite a bit throughout the video, and focus on having good transitions going from one scene to the next. We have a lot of those, like inside the TikTok and Reels course, where you can just kind of keep a nice cadence moving and keep the video flowing nicely for the person that's watching it.
Yeah, we're cutting all those millennial pauses as well.
Yeah, a pause is a death sentence to any video, without a doubt. Even 1 second. I mean, yeah. To also what you just said, the pause. There was a girl, I had mentioned her previously, Chanel. She's an artist. She paints. She had a video that got about 5,000 views, and she could see where everybody dropped off. We took the same video, cut that part out, re-uploaded, and it was at like 45,000 views the last time I checked it.
So would your recommendation be for someone who's listening who maybe has some reels where it's like kind of close, but they're like, now listening to this, they're like, oh, I can see where I can edit. Do you recommend that it's okay for them to go and edit, cut that and repost?
That's such a good question that we get all the time. So I don't like to teach anything off theory. I like to do it always off of either I've done it, or someone I know has done it, or someone under my own guidance has done it, or whatever it is. I've never found, just like I've never found a correlation between different times of the day and how well a video does. I've never found that tweaking a video and re-uploading is going to kill it. I would say don't ever re-upload the same video. But for sure, if they're like, man, I have a couple videos that, especially when you really believed in the concept or you really believe in the story behind it, it's like you want it to do well. So I would say you're not going to have anything to lose by taking it down. Never delete a post, by the way, but archive it, save it to your phone, archive it, bring it into your editing software, whether it's DaVinci, whether it's CapCut, or whatever it is. And definitely, especially if you can see where people are dropping off, and for sure, put a different spin on it, add a different text hook, add a different spoken hook, visual hook, whatever it is, and see how it does. Because I've seen it time and again where, very small tweaks, and a lot of this stuff, it's like small adjustments make a huge difference.
That's such good advice. Amazing. So I know we're going to have people going and doing those little tweaks and re-uploading, which is awesome. It's nice to get some quick wins. Sometimes it can feel overwhelming to go and film a whole new reel following a whole strategy versus just going and first editing an existing one. Yeah. It just feels less overwhelming. And then you've kind of taken that first step, which I love. So let's talk about CTAs, because these are really big.
Yeah, really
and
big.
A lot of people forget them. They underestimate them.
Yeah, again, so like I mentioned earlier, I always tell people in our community, like, the road should really never end with just viewership alone. That's fine. If all you're trying to do is grow your audience, then a fine CTA would be like, follow for more content like this. I mean, there's no harm in that. But I think that the call to action is what ties together, kind of, like I said, that bridge between somebody maybe not knowing who you are and making a purchase on day one, or joining your email list or grabbing a lead magnet or whatever it is. So I think that they are changing a lot too. Like, you can't really get away. When I sold my first digital product in 2018, the CTA of like, click the link in my bio worked so
Yeah.
well, and just
Yeah.
doesn't really anymore. They did a test on, so we use ManyChat quite a bit. If people use Facebook a lot, there's another good software called Group Track. The founder of Group Track is actually in our coaching program. But basically, it just is just a lot harder now to drive a lot of clicks just using a really basic call to action, like hit the link in my profile. They found like under 1% conversion with a link in bio prompt versus almost a 40% conversion using a ManyChat prompt, opening up conversation window with a comment keyword. I'd be happy to talk about some stuff like that, because absolutely amazing opportunity to leverage AI to do kind of some heavy lifting so that you don't have to. But the CTA is so important. And again, a lot of people miss the mark there, but it is the way that you're going to create more conversion, more conversation, more revenue. A lot of great things come from that.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with ManyChat. We use it in our business as well. And
Yeah, it's great.
I mean, it's so much more effective, you're right, than the link in bio. Especially when people, oh my gosh, I'm just going to give everyone a shout out who does this because I see it and it makes me cringe for them. And it's just a really basic mistake. And that's anyone who puts their CTA as visit my website at www.
Oh, yeah. Goodbye.
Let's not
Yeah.
do that. Let's not do that
Never do that.
anymore. Yeah, it's probably the worst CTA you can do. But I understand the thought process behind it, but it's
Sure.
like one of those things where it's like no bueno. So yeah, this is really, really good, Jordan. So let's talk a little bit about ManyChat. There's a lot I want to talk about, but let's start with ManyChat. I know we are coming up for time, so
Yeah, no, we're good. So I think that ManyChat basically is, and I'm not, far from a super expert on it. But I'll tell you, very eye-opening experience was the first experience I ever had with a free ManyChat account. I, again, was creating golf content pretty much full time. Decided I wanted to stop just growing my follower list, and I knew the power of email, and I was a professional copywriter for years. So I know just how powerful it is, converting people from content that you borrow or traffic that you borrow, which is social, to traffic that you own, which is email. And so I wrote a short ebook, and then I created a piece of content. I used a keyword, comment the word book, and I'll send it over right away. And I went to sleep. And then I had like 100 new email leads the next morning. And I was like, wow, there's definitely something to this. So anybody that's new to it, it's basically just, it's an automation software at the end of the day. And it helps kind of, generate leads, generate conversations, create conversations, generate sales in a pretty hands-off manner by using certain keywords. You can really automate so much stuff, the whole DM process, and collect emails right in the software too, like right in the DMs. So it's just a great way to convert much higher, much faster. And again, you don't need millions and millions of views. You just need the right people landing on your content often. And if you have a good call to action with a good way to bring them into your world, I think that ManyChat is a superb way to get started with it for sure.
I completely agree. It's been kind of game changing for us. So I'm obsessed with it. And it's really easy to use as well. It's really user friendly, I find.
Very, yeah. Like, I'm pretty tech minimalist, and
Yeah.
I do okay with it. So
Tech minimalist is a great, a great way of framing it. I love that. Well, this has been so much fun, Jordan. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. Now, there's one thing I do want to quickly touch on
yeah, sure.
because this is just something that I know a lot of jewelry business owners struggle with. And the reality is, like, when they're creating content, there's process videos, which, especially people who work with clay or they're working with gold, there's parts of the process that are super engaging to watch. And what happens is when they create that content, they get a ton more views, but they're getting views from other jewelry business owners, not customers. And then it's like that balance of like, okay, but this is getting me views, so I want to double down on it. But those views on none of those people are going to buy from me. What's your advice to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I just a few months ago, I had someone who in our community, she does art, and she was like, I can't stop attracting other artists.
Mm.
You know, like the only people watching my videos are other artists. And then I was like, let's not do any more tutorials. She's
Yeah.
like, okay. So I think understand, like, okay, you have your customer avatar, you have 1, 2, or 3 of them. If you're super clear every video that you make that it's not going to appeal to as important as it is to know your target audience, it's important to know who you don't want to land on your content to. I think when you get a lot of, let's say, other jewelry business owners ask, like, what is it about this that's attracting them? Like, what is it about this that's interesting to them, to the point where they, you know, are coming to my content, staying on my content? Yeah, I see it quite a bit. I just think that it's important to know, like, who you are creating content for and then who you're not creating content for. And again, shy away from, like I said, tutorials and stuff like that, because that's, yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. And it can be so hard, because when you do get content that's getting the views, it's like, yay, but it's not always for the best. That's really, 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 really that 3-step strategy.
Sorry, what was that last part?
Oh, I know you have it when it comes to.
Yeah, 100%. So the 3-step framework basically is you know, hook, body, offer. Like, that's how Russell Brunson phased it. There's one thing that I wanted to give people, if they're like, okay, I want to get started right now. Okay, like, I want to finish this. I want to finish this call, and I want to go, you know, pull 1 million views in the next week. We try, one of the first things that we try to get people to, in, especially like when I work on a closer level with people, 3 things we try to work out right away are like, okay, is your mindset in the right place? You don't need to know all of the things. We just have to make sure there's not any major leaks in the bucket. From there, we move. The last step is monetization, but right in the middle, we try to dial them in right away on something called one key format. So when I told you about somebody, 330,000 followers, 100 million views in 6 weeks, he did it with one format. So a format basically is like a pillar or a style of content creation. And I want to give people kind of 6 key formats. There aren't a lot outside of like these 6, but if you can experiment with 2 or 3 and then really find like what is the one that is going to be your, I call it like your ace, like ace in your pocket, the thing that you can go back to all the time. If you're struggling to get views, you need to have something you can go back to always, to be like, okay, I'm done experimenting for a bit. I need to get back to, like, I want, you know, 2-3 million views this month. So there's 6 key formats. I would love everybody here to experiment with all of these. They all work really well, but find 1 or 2 that you can go back to all the time. For me was tutorials. Tutorials just worked so well that it was hard to leave it alone. So that's the first one. Education, tutorials, teaching people how to do something. Educating them, not necessarily, doesn't have to be about your product, but it could be about, you know, the process, how it's made, so on and so forth. Number 2 would be storytelling. So storytelling is really good. And again, if somebody, like, if you're a jewelry business owner and you're attracting a lot of jewelry business owners and you don't want to do that, start moving into like a storytelling format. So, could be like, this is a day in the life of me running a jewelry business, running a jewelry store, and really create it to, that was the first video I ever posted after I, you know, went through TikTok and Reels. I was like, here's a day in my life, you know, practicing golf for 16 hours, whatever it was. Again, behind the scenes, day in the life, super entertaining to watch, and also very fun to create. So we have education, storytelling. Third one is challenges. These work extremely well because your ability to spark curiosity and create massive amount of watch time really shines with a challenge format. So it could be like, okay, you're a jewelry business owner. I'm just going to try to use that as an example for all of these. Like, could I run my business for a week without spending $1 on ads, or, you know, something along those lines? Really good challenge that worked for me was like, I would have these golf matches against my son, who was 3 at the time, but we would have these different stakes. Like, we always did it for $5. One of them was like, I have to start from 300 yards away. He gets to start from 15 feet away from the hole. Or I would use a foam ball. He would use a real golf ball. But the more that you can introduce stakes and payoff, which is kind of the thing that people hang on the video for, the better you're going to do. So education, storytelling, challenges are just such an incredible way to get a lot of views.
Those sound like so much fun, actually, because a lot of my clients have children at home, and some of them get them
Nice.
involved in their business, and it just sounds so fun to like get them involved with the packaging or the making pieces, and turn that into a challenge piece of content.
Yeah, challenges. They just, I mean, there's a girl in our community who runs a CRM software, and she's like, "Oh, I couldn't use challenges." I was like, "What if you made a series of taking over people's businesses for a day and seeing how much revenue you can generate without spending any money on ads?" You know,
Mm.
something you just have to kind of keep stretching the creative limit a little bit. The fourth one is skits. So skits are good. You've probably seen it where people will like have a conversation dressed up as two different people. Skits are a really good way to crush objections for your target viewer without being like preaching to them. You can crush objections or misconceptions that people have about certain things in your business or your industry. You can even do a little product placement, stuff like that, without. That's the great disconnect, is business owners think that to sell stuff they have to talk about the stuff that they sell, and then nobody ever watches it and they wonder why. So skits are good. There's two more. The first one is reactions. So reactions are awesome just because, again, you have stakes, or you have a payoff, which is the thing at the end of the video that everybody's staying there for. And if you can make some kind of reaction style content. This is very, very popular, especially amongst people like my daughter's age. She's 7. She loves to watch a reaction style video. And then the last one is stranger format. And this is kind of a dark horse, probably one of my favorites, where you involve random people in your content. Most of the time, they're not random people because it's actually very hard to get somebody to volunteer to be part of a piece of content they don't really care about.
Yeah.
But stranger format, okay, here's just one example would be like, I'm going to take a stack of $10 bills. I'm going to go up to people and say, hey, I'm going to get, you can either take $10 or take 20 to give to someone else. We would do, Meg's dad. So one of our founders, her dad, Jerry, he was about to take a job driving a steel truck in Alberta. And she was like, Dad, why don't we start a golf, content channel for you? Now he makes multiple 6 figures and has like hundreds of millions of views, but he uses the same stranger format, uses it every single one of his videos. Never really deviates from it. He just goes up to people in the parking lot at golf courses and says like, hey, do you mind if I caddy for you today? If I can get you this score on this hole, you're going to win this thing. And it's typically some product placement from like an endorsement or brand deal.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's actually super fun, but also very vulnerable. But I can see so many opportunities for jewelry business owners to go to malls and be like, hey, can I style you? Or hey, can
Yeah.
can
That's a
we
great
do
one, right?
this? Like it would be so fun, but it is vulnerable. It is scary.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of them are not actually going to be strangers because it
Yeah.
is very hard to find someone who is actually a stranger. So it might just be a friend. You might say, "Hey, can you help me out with a piece of content? I need you to, I need you to act. Make sure they're not too good of an actor. Just make sure that they can kind of play the part of, someone who doesn't know you." And
Yeah.
yeah, again, great way to introduce your product to people, or your service or whatever it is, without talking about your product and service. I think there's a time and a place. Email, chat, sales pages, stuff like that. But content, it's a great disconnect. Is people will buy from you when they think that you're entertaining, you're funny, you're engaging, whatever it is. They want to be involved with your business.
That is so, so true. Yeah, people like the reality with the jewelry industry is there's a ton of jewelry businesses, and people think they're like a lot of business owners feel like the reality is people buy from the most well-known brands that they connect
Mhm.
to. So it's about your content needs to be focused on the connection and not on the selling all the time, because once people feel connected, they're like, I'm in, give me the pieces, I want to buy. But this has been so much fun, Jordan. I know we are at time. I feel like we could have chatted about this forever, but thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge with our listeners. And I know we're going to have a lot of people feeling super inspired and wanting to like really dive into reels. So where can our listeners find you and how can they support you?
Yeah, for sure. So, kind of our subdomain, the leg of our brand, OnePeak Creative, is called Find Your Peak. You can find us on Instagram at OnePeak Creative. We've had over 110,000 people come through kind of our flagship program, TikTok and Reels course. I'll give you kind of put together a bit of an offer that you can send out to people, within your community too. And I think that that's a great place to start. It's 2 hours long. We've had people do it like on a drive. You know, one person drives, they sit, take the course, post a video, and they're like multiple millions of views, you know, in 24 hours. So it's super short, super digestible. And yeah, that would kind of be the best place to start. And then, you know, the sky's kind of the limit from there. But that's what I would suggest for everybody, especially if you're like, man, I need, you know, to get something going with organic. I just don't know where to start. That's kind of a good place to do it. And I speak from experience because it really changed a lot for me. And I was a paying
Amazing.
customer, just so everybody knows. The
I love
284.
it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Jordan. We'll link all of those in our show notes so you guys can go click there and follow along and check out the website and check out the Reels course. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, you're so welcome, Robyn. Thank you for having me.